and welcome to Ridge AV's live stream. My name is Candace, and I'm the Digital Marketing Specialist here at Ridge AV. So glad that you've joined us today. Today's stream is part of a new series that we are producing that will kickstart our YouTube channel. Throughout 2023 and beyond, we will be doing more live stream events just like this one, and it will be available right here on YouTube. This content will include product demos, training, hacks, and industry knowledge aimed at equipping you and hopefully making your life and job a little bit easier. If you're looking at building or updating a studio, we would love for you to reach out and come by and check out our setup. As we get ready to dive in, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from so we can say hi. After the presentation, we will open up the chat for you to ask questions and we will answer them live right here today. If you have a question about a specific product, you can shoot us an email directly. And finally, while you're here, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it and we truly value your time. Now, let's get started.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Ridge AV streaming studio. We are live today, streaming from the outskirts of Austin here in beautiful Cedar Park, Texas. My name is Lee and I'm one of the systems designers here at Ridge AV. And I want to thank all of you for joining us on the live stream, as well as those who are actually attending here in person today. This is the first in a series of web stream events that we've designed to support all of you folks who work with production technology. So we hope you'll subscribe, and please let us know if you have any kind of topic that you'd like for us to tackle. Today, we are going to give a demonstration of how to automate lyrics for worship and other events. Providing the wonderful music today is Amy Hooper. We want to welcome her here and give her a big thank you. Amy is a local singer-songwriter and worship leader who's brought some beautiful original music that we're going to use in the demonstration. As you know, the truth is that syncing up lyrics to live music is not as simple as it sounds. Timing problems are distracting, stressful for the texts and the musicians, and way too common. We've probably all experienced cringeworthy moments, maybe even train wrecks. In fact, I'm sure of you folks have some great stories, right? So we don't have time to share those today, but we have set up a simulated live venue here in the studio, and we're going to explore the automation option for consistently syncing lyrics to live music. So our plan, we're going to let Amy play and sing for a brief example here, and then we're going to get into what we're doing in the background, how to make it work. Our own Claudio Ramirez will be joining us to break that down for the setup, the technical how-to. After he's done, we'll have a time of questions, so feel free to throw those things into the chat as we go along, and we'll address them after the show and tell. Now, I'm going to kick it to Amy for a quick demo.
Story. You will finish out my faith, because it's all about your glory, because it's all about your grace.
How's it going? My name is Claudio. I'm one of the designers here at Ridge AV, but also I've been a MIDI head for a bunch of years. I've been using Ableton Live since version 4, I guess, and that might have been around 15 years ago. So one of the things I like doing is I like exploring the capabilities of the software and see how it can communicate with pretty much anything else, because even though the MIDI protocol, as the acronym implies, MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, implies it was created for controlling musical instruments, but it applies to so much more. Basically, anything that can be translated into a digital word of 0 to 127 values can become meaty. So that has been applied to controlled surfaces like this one, like the one I'm using today, in order to control not only the software that we're using for lyrics, but also the mixer that we're running these mics into. So for instance, if I turn these mics down, and we're back, because that's the capabilities of MIDI that extend to many, many things. So in order to break this down, we have Amy here, who's going to demonstrate the human part of whatever we can do. I mean, whatever we can play on top of and adding the human element. Because, as many of you know, it's no secret that a lot of bands and a lot of artists rely on tracks for the live performances. In Amy's case, it's just because she's a solo artist, and basically she'll need a backing track for her to have her full production. But what many people don't realize is that even full bands, you have a 10-piece band, and you're also going to have a backing track for even a thing as small as a tambourine part, or thickening the backing vocals, or then that kind of thing that most musicians rely on when they need to take a breather or do a couple of reinforcements. So whenever you have that, you rely on software like today we're using Ableton Live, but it will apply to Logic, it would apply to Pro Tools, it would apply to many other instances that will reproduce both audio and MIDI tracks. And that's what allows us to communicate with software like ProPresenter, which is what we're using today to display the lyrics. However, it also applies to video, for instance. So if you were using, say, Archaeos or Resolume or Modulate or that kind of software that basically triggers video clips, you can also sync that via MIDI. So this kind of knowledge applies to any software capable of sending MIDI, such as Ableton, and any software capable of receiving MIDI, such as ProPresenter. So in order to break this down, let's see what the setup looks like. Today, we're using two computers. One of them, like I said, is running Ableton Live. The other one that's off screen is running ProPresenter. And the way they're synced up, even though traditionally, with a traditional MIDI setup, you would need one of these. This is a MIDI interface, which essentially has the MIDI connectors on one side. It has a USB port that would allow us to communicate with a computer. And you can do setups as simple or as complex as you basically want, and as many inputs and outputs your interface is capable of. However, in this case, we're actually bypassing the interface here because I want to say for around 20 years, we've been having this protocol that allows us to send MIDI via Ethernet, which is, of course, something that a lot of people don't realize, and it's one of the major advantages that we have nowadays. That protocol is called RTP, or Real-Time Protocol, and it was embedded in Mac OS, I believe, since, I want to say 2005, but don't quote me on that. And then, of course, it has been adopted by Linux. It has been adopted by Windows. There's a bunch of things going on. There are MIDI-capable interfaces that will will incorporate as well RTP, as well as USB and DIN, so that any kind of instrument or any kind of MIDI-capable device would communicate seamlessly. So, if you want to check out the way that this is connected, we go here. If you want to look at my screen, we would go to these utilities and open Audio MIDI Setup. This is kind of what it looks like. Of course, there's a bunch of MIDI devices here because, like I said, I'm a MIDI control freak, if you will. If you go to MIDI Studio here, you can open the MIDI network setup, and right here, you'll see that in my directory, you'll see Rich's iMac, which is the computer that we're using today to run ProPresenter from. One important thing is that in order for this to work, I have to enable this to be viewed by anyone, to be able to connect in this network. Or, of course, if you want to do a couple extra steps, you could do only computers in my directory, but you'll need MAC addresses for that. So it's an extra step, if, of course, a bit more secure, but it takes a bit of work. So whenever I have this, I can select it and hit connect. Of course, right now I'm already connected, but the way this would work if you were starting from scratch is this: you have to highlight it and hit connect, and it will appear right here. It will move to this column right here. We only need to do this on one of the ends of this computer. And of course, I'm kind of bypassing something rather important, and that's that both of these computers are connected to the same network. So we're using just an Ethernet adapter for this computer, and of course the iMac has their native Ethernet port. So they're going to the switch, which of course in a venue you can also use for a number of things. You can run digital audio from there. You can have any kind of control signal going from there. And you're going to use that as your system for controlling everything, essentially.
So, Claudio, for someone that may be brand new to this world,
Please.
Is it accurate to say that our basic setup is that we have a computer running Ableton, which is able to play back our tracks, whether it's the tracks that Amy's playing with or just a click track or whatever. And Ableton is also driving that MIDI signal, which then is being picked up by the computer that has ProPresenter, and that's our basic setup of what's communicating with what.
That is absolutely correct. And please, Lee, by all means, feel free to reel me in whenever I...
No. I just want to make sure we didn't leave someone behind in the initial setup.
Sounds great. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm enabling the communication, which would essentially go both ways. So whenever I'm setting up this network, that computer would also be able to send MIDI data the other way around. However, for this particular application, I'm sending MIDI notes in that direction. Because if we now go to the settings in Ableton, if I go to my preferences, and I go to MIDI, you'll see, well, I have a bunch of things enabled. But here, the first thing that I have here is I have my network session 1 enabling for a track. Track in this case means MIDI notes. So whenever I play a note, say a C or a D or whatever, that would be, well, in this case I'm receiving, but MIDI out here, it's also enabled. And in that case, the communication can go both ways. However, if I were to click sync, I could also send MIDI clocking messages, which of course have their own application. And if I click on remote, I could be able to send MIDI control messages, which is like the fader value and sliders and all of that, which allow for more subtleties, if you will. Because, for instance, if I'm controlling the volume of the effects on Amy's vocals, for instance, with this fader, would you mind just saying something?
Check. Da 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 da.
And then it can bring it back down.
Da 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 da.
And there you go. So that's real-time control. And that's some other kind of things that, for instance, some software might recognize as the opacity of the video that you're showing, or the speed in which it's going to be played. So there's a bunch of applications that you can get from MIDI. So the other thing we have to do here is we have to create a MIDI channel that's dedicated to sending MIDI data. And in this case, what I have to do is my MIDI channel right here, I select the output to be network, and then the MIDI channel that I want to transmit on. In this case, it's just MIDI channel 1, but there is a 1 through 16, and if I were running a more complex kind of setup, I would be able to just diversify that and send, say, MIDI data to one computer on channel 1 and to other computer and channel 2 and so on and so forth. Now, if we go to the settings that we have to do on ProPresenter, we have to go to the preferences. you go. You have to scroll all the way up. There you go. And in Preferences, there's a tab for Devices, which is where we are right now. And that media device that you see there is the media device that I created for this session. However, if you want to add a new one, you just have to click the plus button that's on the bottom left corner. Yeah, you can click it. And then it'll ask you what kind of device you want to create. And in this case, it would be MIDI. So whenever you do that, it asks you, it prompts what kind of device you want to do and what would you want to do with it. So you basically want to select a MIDI channel, and you're going to enable that. Of course, we already have that created, so we can delete this one and just make sure that our device right there says connected, which in this case we are. But of course, if we're starting a session from scratch, we might need to hit connect manually. So that means these two computers are talking right now. Considering that I have my computer set to also send those MIDI notes through this MIDI controller that I have right here, if I go back, for instance, with this button, you'll see my name again. There you go, because that's on ProPresenter as well. As you can tell, we're doing this live, and there's a bunch of communication between all of the devices here. So if I want to go up another slide on ProPresenter, I'll just hit this button right here. And there we go, it fades out. Because the other thing you have to do is you got to make sure that they are communicating on the same note, but you can choose that pretty much. This kind of controller is designed to have this as a C1 by default. So whenever you create that MIDI device on ProPresenter and you go to MIDI mapping, you just have to make sure that next slide is assigned to the same note, which in this case is C1 or MIDI note number 36. And of course, there's a bunch of options there, but for the sake of this particular application, all we care about is next slide, because that's what you normally use. So we have MIDI note 36 or C1 mapped to next slide. And essentially, anything that I play from here on, I can move my slides forward doing this. So what I did is I created here in Ableton, if I go to the other view, I created a clip here, a MIDI clip that I'm going to create another one just because I can. If I insert an empty MIDI clip, and now here, I go to my C1, I go to drawing mode, and I create my note. I'll just take the loop off. Anytime I play this, this is going to skip to the next piece of lyrics that we have. So for the sake of demonstration, there you go. So what happens if I want to create a going back kind of clip? Well, I'll just copy this one, just duplicate it, and this one, I can go out of drawing mode and just move the note right here to C sharp, and this will allow me to go back.
So essentially, you are creating markers in the track that allows you, a MIDI track that's running alongside these vocal tracks or click tracks or whatever the backing tracks are, and you're just creating this MIDI track, and you're entering the notes in basically manually as markers to allow the slides to move forward or even move backwards.
Correct.
Now, what exactly do I have to have for this setup? In other words, if I don't have MIDI controllers and various in and out, in fact, maybe I just have one computer, is this possible? How would I approach the most simple setup that I might have?
Absolutely. I mean, today I'm only using the MIDI controller just in order to show what kind of message I'm sending from here, which in this case is a MIDI note. And for that matter, it could be the keyboard right there, which is also MIDI capable. And if she were to play, of course, if she were connected via MIDI to this setup, if she were to play the C1, it would also trigger that slide change.
But if she, let me ask you this: if maybe Amy's going to a fairly small venue, she's just taking, taking her keyboard and her computer, She's not going to use a whole lot of tracks, but she wants to use a little bit of tracking, and she'd love to throw the lyrics of her new songs
Yes.
out there on the house TVs. Could she drive the whole thing then from a sequence on her keyboard?
Absolutely.
Could she just build a keyboard and have one of the tracks be synced to the ProPresenter on her keyboard?
Correct. If she were using just like a MIDI sequencer kind of thing that a lot of keyboards have built in, she could just dedicate a channel to slide change.
Okay.
And preferably have that on a separate MIDI channel, so it won't affect, or basically, so the rest of the notes that are being played there
Right.
don't also trigger.
So she'll turn her keyboard off basically for that particular channel,
Correct.
and then it'll go.
Correct. Because otherwise she cannot play a C1 live, because otherwise it will go. But yeah, so the simplest solution is what I just showed, which is creating the clips here. And then, of course, you can import them. Yeah, I want the extra step of renaming them here. And I named this one next. And this one previous. And these are essentially copies of these ones that I have right here, which you can, of course, take to the other view by doing this and dragging and dropping. But, of course, I am not using this right now because I already have it done. And what you have to do then is just syncing them to wherever you want the lyrics to change.
Can you tell us what we're seeing here on this screen there? I know we see waveform at the top.
Yes.
What are we looking at under there?
So this is Amy's song. This is her backing track. I have two versions of the song right here. This is a full version, fully produced. It also has her vocals and keys in here. But for the sake of this particular example, we don't need that because we have her live right here. And this second version, that's the same thing minus her vocals and keys. So the first thing I did was I segmented, or I added markers here at the top for all the sections of the song for me to navigate it a little better. And then by listening to the vocals, I determined where we needed a change of slide, and then inserted, of course, let me get out of here. This is going to be more helpful. Then inserted my next clip in each and every one of those. So whenever I hit play, now this is going to be sequenced, and it's going to launch that MIDI message that allows for the slide change, and it's going to run in parallel to her tracks. So it's always going to be in sync, and it's always going to be a reliable kind of result.
So can I, if I'm entering markers, do I have to do it manually? Like I'm looking at the waveform and I'm looking at each place and I'm sticking I'm clicking on those spaces, or can I play the track and with a keyboard or MIDI controller hit the note in the timing that I want that slide to move? Can I enter that way too?
Very much do that. You can record your performance. So you would basically enable record here in the MIDI track, which is right here, and then play along and just hit your note whenever you feel like the slides should change. And that's going to record this instead of being a bunch of tiny clips like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4
Right.
and that. Well, it's going to be a huge clip from top to bottom of the song, but it's going to have one MIDI note per slide change.
And if I need to edit that, if my timing was maybe a little bit off in my recording, I can just jump into Ableton or Logic, whatever I'm using, and just move that marker one way or the other.
You can nudge it, you can quantize it. Of course, lyrics are not usually like straight on the beat. You know, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But if you wanted to shift this around, well, you have the option of moving it in the timeline, like moving the whole clip back or forward. Or within the clip, you can take the note and then move in it whichever way you want.
So it's pretty easy to get it like you want it, and then it's there every time, and it's going to play it the same way every time because of the consistency there. So just in full disclosure, our workflow here was to take Amy's song. She sent us the lyrics. We took those lyrics, decided how we wanted to break them down into ProPresenter. We built the ProPresenter slide show the way we needed it, felt like it should be. Then we come back in, play the song, figure exactly where in that audio track those MIDI triggers needed to be placed.
Correct.
And recorded those, went back and edited so that at the end, we have the tracks synced with the MIDI notes that are triggering ProPresenter. So when Amy plays along, it all comes together synced.
Exactly. And not only that, but it's going to be reliable. And so every single time it's going to play it exactly the same way. So, yeah, that's exactly the purpose of doing this, because, of course, you're going to have results that you can replicate anywhere.
And it is scalable, of course, like we talked about before. Amy could just take her laptop, or probably conceivably even an iPad, take that and run her backing tracks that have that built in. So it's scalable from that to a large 9-person band and vocal team on a weekend. And of course, a lot of those situations are not compatible with automated. Lots of times we need the flexibility to be able to alter that midstream, but a lot of times I think it would be preferable to have this approach when it's a pretty formulaic song pattern and we know what we're doing.
Correct. So basically, this is the breakdown in its most basic form. I want to reiterate that whichever topic you would like us to cover in the future editions of this live stream, please just shoot us an email or put in the comments. That, of course, we can take this up a few notches or down a few notches. We can break pretty much anything down that you feel like production-wise would be useful for you.
We also want to make sure that you understand we built this studio not just to do these things, but to also show that we have this technology in-house that you can come and look at. You can actually use it if you'd like to. And of course, we're available if you want to build something like that in your own facility, or if you need help or have questions about streaming technologies. So please let us know. We would love to be a resource for you in any of those ways that we can. And we're going to turn it back over to Amy and let her sing a little bit more and demo this automation.
Sure. And then after that, if we have any questions in the comments or anything, just shoot us our way, and we'll try to tackle those. So, Amy, why don't you take it to the second half of the first verse?
Still I stumble on the journey. Still I tremble in the dark. Still I linger in the valley. And I wonder where you are. Holy Spirit, breathe your peace into my soul. Holy Spirit, please remind me what I know. 'Cause you never failed me, you never left me. So Jesus, help me trust you now. You won't forsake me, no matter where you take me. Oh Jesus, help me trust you now.
Well, we didn't have any questions coming in on the chat, but we want you to know that we are here for you guys. If there's any question that you have, I know sometimes the questions are too detailed to just throw into a chat. So please don't hesitate to call us, shoot us an email or a text, and we will be happy to come out and look at your situation, or just chat on the phone, or help you figure out the best solution for your situation. He's Claudio. I'm Lee. This is Ridge AV, and we appreciate seeing you. See you next time.